It was the last night of summer, and I was sitting in my room, controller in hand, ready to conquer the online world of Halo 3 on my Xbox 360. I had been counting down the days until I could play again, and now that school was starting in the morning, I knew that this was my last chance to play for a while. I was fully immersed in the game, my eyes glued to the screen as I navigated through the virtual battlefield. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled my ears, and I was in the zone. I was in the middle of a team deathmatch. My team was down by 1 point, and I knew I had to score the final kill to win. That's when I noticed a player with the gamer tag, creation_man. I aimed my virtual gun and pulled the trigger, scoring the final kill of the match. The victory screen popped up, and I let out a victorious whoop. But something strange happened next. Almost instantly, I received a message from creation_man. I opened it, expecting some trash talk or a challenge for a rematch, but instead, I was met with a strange and eerie audio message. It was unintelligible, like a garbled voice, and I couldn't make out any words. I felt a chill run down my spine as I quickly closed the message, wondering who this mysterious player was and why they had sent me such a strange message. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling uneasy and on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease I had experienced the night before, and I couldn't help but think about the strange message from creation_man. I forced myself to get ready for school, trying to push the thoughts out of my mind. I grabbed my backpack and headed out the door, my mom reminding me to be home by dinner. I walked to school, taking the same route I had taken countless times before. The streets were quiet. The only sounds were the distant chatter of my classmates and the rustling of leaves in the trees. As I walked into school, I was greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of a new school year. Kids were chatting and laughing, excited to see their friends again after the long summer break. I made my way to my locker, trying to focus on the day ahead, but my mind kept drifting back to the message from creation_man. The day passed by in a blur of classes, homework, and the usual routine. I sat next to my best friend Nathan in most of my classes, and he could tell that something was off with me. He asked me what was wrong, but I just told him that I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to focus on the lectures and discussions, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. At lunch, Nathan told me about a strange man wearing a piece of paper taped to his head that was found rambling about nonsense by the police a few months back. It creeped me out, but I didn't mention the message from creation_man. I didn't want to think about it anymore. Nathan could tell that something was bothering me, but I didn't want to talk about it. I tried to push the thoughts out of my mind, but they kept creeping back in. The day dragged on, and I found myself constantly checking my phone, hoping for a message from creation_man. But there was nothing. As I walked home from school that day, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had been building inside me. I got home and went to my room, trying to forget about the strange message and the strange man in the paper mask that Nathan had told me about. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I tried to focus on my homework and my game, but my mind kept drifting back to the message from creation_man. I didn't know what it meant, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off and something bad was going to happen. That night, my little brother Luke woke up in the middle of the night crying, and when I asked him what was wrong, he told me he had a nightmare about a floating paper mask screaming. I tried to comfort him, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was connected to the message from creation_man and the strange man in the paper mask that Nathan had told me about. I didn't know what it all meant, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off and something bad was going to happen. I decided to stay up with Luke and play Minecraft together on the Xbox to try to take our minds off our nightmares. As we were playing, I suddenly got a party invite from creation_man. My heart began to race as I stared at the invite, not sure what to do. Before I could accept it, our mother came in, incredibly mad, and screamed at us to get back to bed. I quickly closed the invite and turned off the Xbox, trying to calm her down and explain that we were just trying to have some fun together. But she didn't listen. She just continued to yell at us and ordered us to go back to bed. Feeling defeated and frightened, I went back to bed with Luke, unable to shake off the feeling of unease and dread that had been building inside me. I couldn't help but wonder what creation_man wanted from me and why he was trying to contact me again, and the strange man in the paper mask from my brother's nightmare. It all seemed to be connected in some way, but I couldn't figure out how. I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, not knowing what the next day would bring, and if it will bring any answers to my questions. The next day at school, I was on edge, still thinking about the strange message from creation_man and the strange man in the paper mask. As I was waiting outside my first period class, my phone suddenly buzzed with a new text message from an unknown number. I picked up my phone to see the message simply said, "Omen." My heart dropped and I felt my stomach lurch as I dropped my phone on the floor. I looked up to see one of the girls waiting outside the door with me, Rachel, start giggling at me. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, thinking that this message had something to do with the recent events. I quickly ran to the bathroom, trying to process what had just happened. I picked up my phone and checked my Xbox account, only to find that creation_man's account had been terminated for violating Microsoft's terms of service. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I realized that this strange message was probably just a coincidence and had nothing to do with the rest of the events. I quickly deleted the text message, not wanting to give it any more thought. After school, I went home and practiced more Halo 3, trying to forget about the strange message and the strange man in the paper mask. I was relieved that Creation Man's account had been terminated, and I felt like I could finally put the strange events behind me and move on. The next day at school, I continued to put everything behind me and forget about the strange message and the strange man in the paper mask. However, Nathan was not at school, but I wasn't too worried. I thought he might have just overslept or something. But as the day went on, I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. During my last period, I was called into the office by my principal, Mr. Gibson. My heart raced with fear, thinking I was in trouble. But when I got to the office, I found Nathan's girlfriend, Addison, there as well. Mr. Gibson informed us that Nathan was missing and hadn't been seen since last night. Time seemed to stretch into infinity as Addison started crying and my mind was wiped blank. I couldn't believe it. Nathan was my best friend and now he is missing. Just as I was about to lose it, my phone started ringing. I answered it, and to my horror, it was the unknown number from before. I answered, and all that was heard on the other end was an impossibly deep voice saying, before the phone hung up. Mr. Gibson immediately demanded to see my phone, thinking it might be Nathan, but when he picked up, all he heard was the same deep voice, and the phone hung up again. He took my phone as evidence and sent us both out of the office. The rest of the day was a blur, as the police arrived at the school and searched the whole building. I couldn't help but think about Creation_man again, and about how all of this might be connected to him. I was racked with guilt, thinking that maybe if I just blocked him or reported him, Nathan would still be here. As I went home, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something terrible had happened to Nathan, and it was all my fault. As I walked home from school, my mind was filled with memories of Nathan. We had been best friends since kindergarten, when we bonded over our love of superheroes. I remember the time we spent hours building the ultimate fort in his backyard, using blankets and chairs to create a secret hideout where we could play out our superhero adventures. Or the time we convinced the whole neighborhood to have a massive water balloon fight on a hot summer day, with Nathan leading the charge as Captain America. Even though we were getting older, we still found our ways to have fun and make memories together. But now Nathan was missing, and all I could think about was finding him. I couldn't bear the thought of going home and facing my parents' questions, so I decided to take a detour and head to Nathan's house. But when I got there, the streets were blocked off and there were police cars everywhere. My heart sank as I realized that something terrible must have happened to Nathan. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, so I started to walk faster, trying to shake the eerie sensation. But no matter where I went, I felt like someone was following me. I broke into a run, my heart pounding in my chest. As I turned down an arc alley, I saw him. The man with the paper mask, his face obscured by eye holes cut too high above where his eyes should be. He screamed guttural sounds in a deep, terrifying voice.
I should have won, Eddie. I love winning. I'm a winner. You'll pay, Eddie. You'll pay.
He chased me, closing in on me with each step. My mind erased, and I knew I was going to die. The man put his face to mine and whispered in my ear,
I love burger straight, and I hate McMusselton.
Before striking me with his fist, and everything went black. In a small, dimly lit room, a television flickers to life, displaying a local news report about the tragic death of a young boy named Eddie Carmichael. The camera pans to show a close-up of the boy's anguished parents, who are being interviewed by the reporter. They speak of their son's love for video games, his close bond with his best friend, Nathan Abernathy, and their heartbreak of losing him so suddenly. As the report continues, the camera cuts to footage of the police investigation, showing officers combing through the back alley where Eddie's body was found. The reporter explains that the police have yet to make any arrests, but they are following several leads and urging anyone with information to come forward.